Welcome back everybody to the story of King Otto the Great of East Francia. The first 10 years of his reign were covered in the 3 previous videos, so if you haven't seen those, definitely make sure to check them out first. For now though, let's dive straight back into the story. We're picking up in the year of 946, after the death of Queen Edith of England, who was of course the first wife of Otto. His son Leodolf is named successor at the age of 16, right after his mother died. Ludwig IV of West Francia is still held captive by some opponents in his realm, so Otto moves to free him with 32 legions. Otto captures the cities of Paris, Reims or Reims, and Laon, and reinstates Ludwig on the throne of France, or West Francia at this time more accurately. Otto thought about going for the Danish city of Rouen for vengeance, but decides against it as winter had approached. Hugo the Elder, Count of Francia, submits to Otto and is forced to accept Ludwig as the king of West Francia. You can see right here, the king of France or West Francia at this time is Ludwig IV, and he's married to Otto's older sister. Hugo the Elder, the opponent of Ludwig, who was struggling for the French throne, is also married to Otto's sister, but to his younger one. And of course, as I mentioned in the previous video, Hartwig and Hugo the Elder would eventually have a son called Hugo the Younger, more commonly known as Hugh Capet in the English language, who is of course the father of the House of Capet and will become King of France eventually. Leodolf, Otto's son, marries the Duke of Swabia, and that duke dies in 949, so in that year Leodolf becomes the Duke of Swabia himself. Otto in the meantime wins a complete victory over the Bohemian king and subdues him. Therefore the realm of Bohemia is also integrated into Otto's lands. Otto in 951 though marries the widow queen of Italy called Adelheid, and he has 3 sons with his new wife, namely Heinrich, Brun and Otto, as well as a daughter. His first 2 sons though would not reach adulthood, as you can see in the family tree right here. Otto then real quick sorts things out in Italy and secures support of the nobles there. But this is the final straw for his son Leodolf. Remember, he was promised the throne when his mother died, but now Otto has a new wife, and therefore Leodolf turns on his father and plots at Saalfeld, just like his uncle Heinrich had done, interestingly enough, in a video before this one, together with Conrad the Red, the Duke of Lorraine, in order to secure the throne for Leodolf and rise up against his father Otto. So Otto now, together with his now loyal brother Heinrich, is faced an alliance of Leodolf and Conrad the Red. Otto finds out about this conspiracy and has a meeting with Leodolf, Conrad and the Archbishop of Mainz. Otto there is pressured into signing a treaty between the 3 parties, making some concessions to Leodolf. Back home in Saxony though, Otto nullifies the treaty and declares Leodolf as well as Conrad as enemies of the crown, unless they hand out the conspirators. This might sound a bit weird because obviously Conrad and Leodolf themselves are the conspirators. But at this point, remember, Otto's goal is not to sour relationships in the family. He definitely needs the support of these 2 guys. These are, as we see right here, 2 dukes of his empire. 2/5 of all his lands are pretty much controlled by these 2 guys, so he needs their support. He cannot just say, I'll kill these guys or I'll never deal with them again. So what he wants is to force them to acknowledge him as the king once more and subordinate themselves. So this is a power play that's going on right now. And what he means by handing over the conspirators to him, he just want to find some lower level counts or nobility that he can blame this affair on, as long as Conrad and Leodolf are willing to concede their claims. So finally at Fritzlar, a momentous Reichstag assembly is held. Brother Heinrich charges the Archbishop of Mainz for plotting with Leodolf, and Otto ends up banishing a couple of counts who had previously fought alongside him. This is not entirely a good thing for him to do. He needs support of every single nobleman, of every single guy who has even an ounce of power in this empire in order to win this rebellion, in order to defeat his son. But he ends up alienating a few people there, of course. Luckily for him, though, in Lorraine, the people rise up against their Duke Conrad, not wanting trouble with King Otto. A bloody battle ends in a draw, which is not really good news for any of the parties involved. Otto finally takes action and moves and besieges his son Leodolf for 60 days in Mainz. Negotiations between the two parties lead nowhere. Now, though, disaster strikes and the Bavarians betray Otto and Duke Heinrich, who is supposed to be in control of Bavaria, and they join Leodolf's side, who retreats to Regensburg, which is, of course, the most important city in Bavaria at this point in time. Only commanding a few men at this point, Otto moves to Bavaria. He tries to sort out the things quickly, but as we see and now, 3 of the 5 duchies are in open rebellion against him. And remember, Franconia might not have joined them at this point officially, but Mainz is pretty much the most important city in Franconia, and the Archbishop of Mainz seemingly is on the side of Leodolf, so this is looking very grim right now for Otto, and he doesn't have a lot of men with him, as I just said, when he moves to Bavaria. Most nobles now actually support Leodolf, and this is not by chance or anything. This is most likely because of Otto's second marriage. He had married Queen Edith, who was very, very popular, his first wife, and she was from England, and people accepted her and therefore accepted his son Leodolf with that first wife as the rightful heir to the throne. Now Otto, out of nowhere, has this alliance with the Italian queen going, and the Italians aren't exactly popular in Germany or East Francia at this point in time. Especially these southern duchies of East Francia, they don't want this alliance with Italy. They're enemies of Italy, if anything. The Lombards that are pretty much in northern Italy, the reigning kingdom, they aren't friends of the Bavarians by any means, so they want to by all means diminish the influence of Italians on the throne of the empire. So that's probably why many noblemen switch to the side of Leodolf, whose family they are more in favor of. Duke Hermann of Saxony is the last real loyal duke to Otto at this point, and he sends reinforcements, but the troops are intercepted by Conrad and Leodolf. And the leader of these reinforcement troops, called Wichmann, he actually switches sides and joins Conrad and Leodolf as well. So even this reinforcement army that was supposed to bolster Otto's forces and give him a chance to quell the rebellion in Bavaria, even these troops are now stripped from him, and at least the leader of them switches sides, so he doesn't get these men. So he doesn't really have a choice. At least Duke Hermann manages to hold on to Saxony despite there being serious attempts made to overthrow him there as well and turn Saxony against their king. And some sort of guerrilla warfare ends up ensuing in Bavaria. No battle is fought between the two parties, but no surrender is achieved either. So at the end, nobody can tip the scales in the Duchy of Bavaria to their side. The support is split. With some considerable losses, Otto ends up retreating to Saxony after about 3 months in Bavaria, not having been able to bring about decisive action in this conflict. Otto in Saxony is lenient with the conspirators who had tried to overthrow Hermann and turn the duchy against him, so this earns him some brownie points with the still undecided noblemen in the country. Otto still displaying this very lenient, this very merciful nature, and holding the rest of the support that he still has remaining together. This is not looking good for our king right now, but a big turn of events happens. The Hungarians enter Bavaria and ravage Franconia. They ally themselves with Leodolf, but even his supporters aren't safe from their raids. This is a big PR coup for Otto, who assembles a big force to meet these Hungarians, but is avoided by them. They move all the way over to Gaul and back home, ravaging the Western European countryside pillaging many villages. And this is terrible news for Leodolf, because although they were supposed to be allied with him and didn't really harm him, many of his allies, you can see these Hungarians moved through Bavaria, through Lorraine as well. These were the areas that were supposed to be allied with Leodolf. And now he's allying with the Avars, with the Hungarians, and they ravage the lands of his supporters. This is not looking good for Leodolf, and we see he can't keep this rebellion up because he's not the type of leader who can really unify all his allies, and he should have never allied with these Hungarians because they don't give a you know what about who's on the throne of this East Frankian Empire. They just want to pretty much raid whatever they can, get some good loot, and then retreat. So this was a big misstep by Leodolf there. After all this turmoil on their soul, which they had little stake in, the Bavarians finally won peace, and a trial is held at Langenzenn in 954. Otto again is merciful, but Leodolf cannot be convinced to subordinate himself, which is why Conrad and the Archbishop of Mainz finally switch to Otto's side. Leodolf simply can't be reasoned with. At this point he's lost the support that he previously had, and he couldn't defeat Otto before, so at this point it's looking very bad for him. And not even now is he willing to subordinate himself and renounce the claim to the throne that he has laid. So Otto has no choice. He has to keep up the struggle against him, but luckily his most powerful allies, namely the Archbishop of Mainz and Conrad, are now back on Otto's side, and Leodolf is pretty much all on his own. Leodolf and his men leave the trial at Langenzenn, but are followed and caught up to at Rostal by Otto. This is pretty much in my backyard, and today this is a very small village outside of Nuremberg, and there's pretty much only forests down there. But at this point there was a little castle there, and a big battle ensued here. A bloody battle ends with enormous casualties only when the night sets in, and Leodolf once more manages to move on, escape the area, and retreat back to Regensburg. Otto again wins a decisive battle there at Regensburg, and Leodolf now wants peace, but again refuses to submit, so the fighting continues. After 1.5 months of siege, peace and a trial at Fritzlar is determined, where Leodolf finally personally begs his father for pardon and is accepted tearfully back into the family. Mainz and Franconia surrender as well, and Leodolf as well as Conrad remain loyal to Otto from there on out. So you can see right here all these powerful men, Leodolf, his son, and the Duke of Swabia, Conrad as the Duke of Lorraine, now back on Otto's side, and Heinrich, of course, at this point also very loyal to him, is in power in Bavaria. So in 3 of those 5 duchies he has family members that are now loyal again to him. And remember, in Saxony he doesn't have a family member there, but Duke Hermann of Saxony had stood by him even when all the other guys had switched sides, so Otto can definitely count on him as well. A victory of Margrave Gero and Conrad the Red over some Slavic tribe. It brings loot and lifts the spirits in the empire. Otto finally takes the city of Regensburg as well and gives all of Bavaria back under the control of his brother Heinrich. So this affair is finally settled. Leodolf had felt disrespected and tried to seize power. Although he almost succeeded, he finally came up short. Now though, East Francia is more or less unified behind Otto. For now it looks as though the challenges are sufficiently conquered, but in the next video we are going to experience the climax of Otto's life and work, and see whether or not this East Frankish Empire is built to last. I want to thank you all so much for joining me right here. Please stay tuned for the next episode, where the famous battle of the Lechfeld is going to be covered. The big encounter between Germany and Hungary, if you will. So please look out for that one. Take care until then, and I'll see you next time.